as part of this, turned it into a naked relay. And so there's a bunch of naked professional distance runners sprinting back and forth, and I got paired up with this Scottish guy, and it looked like it was going to be pretty close, and we were the anchor legs. And I looked at him and I said, just be prepared, my friend. I have blazing 59-second quarter speed. And this guy looks at me and he just assumes I must have said 49 seconds. And he goes, oh, I'm not worried. I've run 45.6, my friend. I'll take you. I ran a 1:44.800 6 months ago. And I'm like, okay, I'm about to get absolutely killed. And then as we take off, and he literally doubles the distance between me in the first 10 steps. He sort of looks over his shoulder, and I think then it hits him. No, he really said 59. And he literally turned around and ran backwards and beat me on that 100. And let me tell you, in the list of life experiences you don't want, it's losing a 100-meter sprint to a small, hairy Scottish man who is naked and running backwards. It's just not, it's not good for your ego, and it's something you can never scrub out of your brain. All right. Introed with that. It's really tough without being able to hear laughter to know whether that went totally flat and people are appalled or if that was funny or not. Okay. I think that the biggest thing that if you're running and you want to get better and you're not happy with where you are, or you're enjoying it but you just wish you could be a little bit better, I think the biggest thing that I can impart to people is that there is a single superpower in distance running, and that is aerobic endurance. You can get a little quicker, you can improve your speed, and yes, I'm not going to lie to you, the absolute best, the Olympic medalists on the track have blazing speed, but there are way more distance runners with blazing speed who never made it than there are those who made it. So the need for speed comes in when you finally make the Olympic final. But up to that point, it's always just about being aerobically stronger. So if you want to have any shot at any level, it's about the aerobic capacity, the ability to run quickly. Not necessarily blazing fast, but quickly, aerobically, relaxed, with some control. We'd all like to think that, the legend of Steve Prefontaine, that, that you just hammer as hard as you can and you'll somehow break through to another level. And what people, sort of miss in that story is if you look at all of Pre's best races, he negative split. Yeah, he was a hardworking guy. He was willing to run from the front. But when he went into a 5,000, he ran that first mile in 4:24. That was easy for him because he had that aerobic power. He could make 66-second quarters nice and easy. And so I think that if you can kind of get that in your head and into that mentality that what you're really trying to do when you're trying to break through to another level in running, when you're trying to make that varsity team or make your state qualifying meet or qualify for your all-state meet, whatever your goal is, that it's about pushing your aerobic fitness to that next level. Even kicking. I mean, at a world-class level, I am slow as molasses. 59 seconds for 400 is not going to scare anybody who's a professional runner. But I outkicked a lot of guys over the years because I could run 60 at the end of anything, even when I was all out. And that's aerobic. That's that ability to have some aerobic energy still there. Now, if you're a man like me and you've got this great aerobic power, and then you meet a distance runner who is got both, who has both, I'm trying to remember. I know Ben True has spoke at camp a number of times. He's a 13-minute 5,000 guy. There's all that aerobic ability, and he can run a quarter in 51 seconds or 50 seconds. If you've got both, it's the next level. But if you're going to be in the race, you've got to have one. So I think I want to talk a little bit about trying to get that aerobic power and how you do it. And I think as young athletes, we tend to do a lot of intervals, and a lot of us tend to get really, really good at intervals and not really, really good at running fast in a race. Because there's some weird races out there now in the virtual world, but in the ones I've run, you don't get to stop and take like 1 minute breaks to recover and then, start again. And I think a lot of us get really good at doing that. I know when I was in high school, we mentioned I barely broke 10 minutes. So my senior in high school, I had run, I think, 9:57 indoors. And I came outdoors, and I really wanted to run 9 minutes. It wasn't a realistic goal, but that was the goal. And so I started to do quarter-mile repeats at a pace that would put me in that vicinity. So 65 to 67 seconds. And I would take these big, long breaks, about a 400-meter jog. And at first I couldn't do it. I think the first time out I averaged like 69, 70 seconds, which is still faster at the time. I mean, my race pace was 75 seconds a lap, right? And I repeated this workout every week or two from March through to June. And by the end, I actually did a session where I did 8 by 400 and I averaged 60.8, I think, which given a 59 flat best, I mean, I was flying. And if you think about that in terms of the work, it's 2 miles of work, and I improved by an average of about 8-9 seconds a lap. So that's about 80 seconds improvement for 2 miles of work. So if I'd been doing the right workouts, I would hope to improve that same amount over a 2-mile race. So 80 seconds off of 9:57, put you down around an 8:37, and I'm the high school national record holder at the time. This isn't much of a spoiler, but I didn't do that. I ran 9:48 or 9:47 was my high school best, so I took 10 seconds off, or about 1 second a lap. Meanwhile, there was a kid I had raced indoors who was almost the exact same level I was at, named Mark Miller. And around the same time that I was coming up with this plan at the end of winter that I was going to do these 400s, he had gone on a recruiting visit. And he had found some kids who were redshirting, who were doing the workout, and he had jumped in the workout with them, which I think is technically an NCAA violation, but nothing so, and it's not the end of the world, sort of like, he was taking payment or something. It was a small Division III school. But the kids he was doing the workout with tell him they're going to do 8 by 400 in 70 seconds with a 200 jog rest. And he's like, that sounds really easy. All these guys have run like under 4:20 for the mile. He and I had just raced indoors, and we both PR'd in the mile. I think he'd run 4:35. And he's like, that seems too easy, but okay, I'll do it. What they didn't really tell him is they were going to run those 200s in 45 seconds, 6-minute mile pace. And I think even if they had, he wouldn't have freaked out that much. His regular runs were pretty close to that. So he said he did the first quarter, and it felt super easy. And he was like, wow, they really are running 70s. And he did the second quarter, and he said, it felt really easy. But he said right at the end, he kind of went, I can't believe the second one. I'm kind of breathing a little heavy. And he realized over that next 200 jog in 45 seconds, he just wasn't recovering. So he survived the third quarter. And then said he basically had to run all out for the 45-second jog to stay on. And as soon as they started the fourth quarter, he fell off and ended up running like almost an 80 and stopping the workout. And he was devastated. And he went home and he told his high school coach about this. And his coach was a guy who was willing to experiment and said, well, let's keep trying to do that workout. Let's do it every other week or so, maybe once a week, maybe every 2 weeks when we can fit it in. And because you should be able to do that, right? You're in good enough shape. You can do 8 by 470 quite easily. You can run 6-minute mile pace quite easily. Why can't you combine the two? And so that's what Mark did. And by the end of the spring, he was able to do his 8 by 470 with the 45-second jog 200 break. And that doesn't look as much improvement as it does for me. I mean, in the very beginning, he could do 8 by 470. The first time he went home and attempted the workout, what he did is he slowed the jogs down to 1 minute. And so then each time he just tried to make the jog a little bit quicker. But in terms of improvement that matters, improvement in the races, Mark is the winner because he goes from 4:35 in the mile at the start of this season. And then in his league championship, he runs 4:26. So he's already up 9 seconds. Then in his state qualifier, depending on where if you're a Massachusetts runner, there's what I always call districts, if you're a Central Mass kid, but everybody else called state class. but it's essentially the qualifier for the All-State Championships. And in that meet, he won, and he ran 4:21. So now he's already taken 14 seconds off his mile as a senior. And then at the All-State Championships, he won the battle of the best of the rest. At the time, there was a very good, two very good high schoolers, but one of them was in the mile in Massachusetts, a kid named Andy Powell, who went on to run for Stanford and is the coach at Oregon now. And Powell was trying to break 4 minutes in the mile and went out in 1:59 for the first 800. So everybody else kind of hung back. And of that group, Mark out-kicked everybody and was runner-up in this Massachusetts State meet. He ran 4:14. So he improved 21 seconds in the mile in a single season, his senior year in high school, having run all 4 years. And the only change he made was to change how he was doing his intervals, to focus instead on reducing the rest and making that pace more specific to the type of work that he was doing. And he saw a similar improvement in the 2 mile. Shortly after he graduated, he ran an all-comers meet, and he ran about a 9:10 2 mile. So he'd taken about 50 seconds off his 2 mile best because he had a 10:02 best coming into the outdoors. So you're just taking that and saying, okay, you know what? Yeah, I can try to get better and better at these intervals, or I can kind of think about what's the difference between my intervals and a good race. Because most of us can do a set of intervals that we go, man, if I did, 8 400s at that pace in a race, I'd be very happy with that time. But then actually putting it together is the tough part. And so I think addressing that and how you do workouts and really thinking of the most important variable of any workout being the recovery rather than changing the pace of the reps or something like that, I think is super, super helpful. All right, I'm going to jump to talking about racing, mostly because I get to tell 2 stories, and that'll probably be helpful at least a little bit. So if this is not you, I'm sorry, but almost every high school runner, I'm sorry, you guys, you're legend, you're notorious, have been for all time, for going out crazy fast. It's like I swear, it's like this rite of passage in high school. Everybody needs to sprint off the line, particularly in cross country, but in all events. I think when I ran my 2 mile PR in high school, so again, it was like 9:48. So that's about 74, maybe just under 74 seconds a lap. I think I went out in 65 for the first 400, and I know I was not in the top 5. I was down in the field and ended up actually moving up as the race went on. So, I mean, high school runners tend to go out really, really fast. And if there was one thing I could encourage you to not do, it would be to go out that fast. Now, sometimes in cross country, I understand. You don't have a choice. If a course narrows down really quickly, you just got to get out and get yourself into a position, or it's going to be more work to get around a pack, and that's the different scenario. But generally speaking, most of your races are not that heavily packed, and certainly on the track, and if you do any road races, you can go out more controlled. And if you do, you'll have massively more success. So I was a fast starter all through high school, and I got to college, and I ran my first college cross country, and I was on at UMass to like prove my worth. And there was a kid who was running for Bentley at the time, Cooley's College, Mello. I want to say Gary Mello, but he had been top 5 at the NCAA championships the previous year. And I thought, what better way to prove myself than trying to beat this guy, with no understanding that his 10K pace was faster than my 2 mile PR. And so on this cross-country course, we went out and we ran the first 2 miles in 10 flat. And that was probably the best 2 mile I'd ever run in my life at the time because it was cross-country and much slower terrain than the track. And I'm hanging on to Gary. We've left everybody else behind. We come up the hill to 3 miles, about 15:05, which means it's by far and away the fastest 5K I've ever run. And I go by George Davis, who was the coach at UMass Lowell at the time. He was this kind of old, grizzly kind of guy. He had like a white beard and bad teeth, and he always had like this like evil villain laugh. But I go by him, and I'm expecting him to be impressed. I'm thinking he's gonna really say some encouragement. And he leans in. He looks at the watch and he leans in as I go by, like he's like almost in my ear, and he just goes, "Don't drop out." And I'm like, come on, man, I'm not going to drop out. Like, I'm killing this. I'm running with this guy who's one of the best in the country. I feel great. And about 800 meters later, I knew why he said that, because my world was coming to an end. Gary had left me behind. Acid had entered my body on a level that I was just totally unprepared for. And I'm realizing I've still got a mile and a half to go, which is half of a high school cross-country race. And there was a little stone wall we had to get over. And I literally stopped and like fell forward over it because I was so tired I couldn't find a way to work my legs over it in a running fashion. And I stumble and crash my way through the last 2 miles at barely under 6-minute pace, which is what I'd been doing my training runs at. Now, luckily, it was a really small meet. I didn't get caught by anybody else. So Gary finishes up, beats me by like a minute and a half, and then I'm the next guy to come stumbling across the line. Now, as a bit of context for this, my high school coach was a minister. I heard him swear twice in 6 years of running with him. It was damn both times, and it was under his breath, and he apologized profusely. So I crossed the line and, stumbled through the chute in a level of pain and disorientation that I was unprepared for. I always raced hard, but going hard for another 2 miles was definitely took a toll. And I get to the end of the chute, and George, he grabs my jersey like he's going to punch me or something. And he gets right up in my face, and he starts screaming F-bombs. And I'm like, and it takes me a little bit to realize he's saying good things. He's like, that was effing toughness. That's how you got to race. You have to have the balls to go like that. And just tell me what a great job I did. But then, after he's done this for about 30 seconds, and I figured it out, and I'm feeling good about myself, he goes, now we just got to teach you to not be so effing stupid. And I'm like, huh, what? You just said it was great. He's like, no, it was great that you didn't drop out, but like, you could have run so much better. You can't beat that guy, but you could have been a minute closer to him if you'd just gone out like with some semblance of intelligence, So that was my first day as a freshman. I don't learn lessons quickly. So for 3 more years or 2.5 more years, I continue to go out too fast. And I continue to blow up and race tough. And George is sick of it. George has had enough. And we're in San Diego for an outdoor track meet, and I'm scheduled to run the 5,000. And I really want to go out in 4:40 for the first mile. I think that's my plan. And the night before the race, this is before cell phones, the phone in the hotel room rings, and it's George. And he's like, come down to my room. Okay. So I go down to George's room, and I get in there, and there's an airline ticket. This is back when we still had paper airline tickets. You didn't put it on your phone. There's an airline ticket sitting on his bed, and he goes, Nate, you know what that is? I'm like, yeah, George, it's an airline ticket. He goes, it's your airline ticket. And I go, oh, thanks. And he's like, no, you're not here to get your ticket. If you go out 1 second under 5 minutes tomorrow, 1 second, I'm going to throw that airline ticket in the trash. You're going to find your own way home. And if you're 1 second under 10 minutes at 2 miles, I'm going to throw that airline ticket in the trash, and you're going to have to find your own way home. Now, I did not have a lot of money as a kid growing up. I did not have a lot of money in college. I had no way. Like, I could call my parents and say I was trapped in San Diego, but they weren't going to have any money to buy an airline ticket back. Like, the only way I was in San Diego was if the university had paid for it, and the only way I was getting home was if the university paid for it. Now, I thought George might be bluffing, but the year before, he did leave a kid in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. That's a town high. So I knew he was at least capable of doing something like this. And so I swallowed my pride. And the next day, we go to this race in San Diego. It's like the best conditions I've ever raced on the track in my life. And I hit the mile in 5:02. And you've never seen someone check their watch so many times in a race. Like, I mean, I was like literally, and now I had that 2-second buffer of safety, so I ran 5 minutes for the second mile. I went through in 10:02, and I honestly felt like George had ruined my race at that point. I was like, I feel so easy. I mean, I could have run so fast. There were 2 guys from Southern Utah out front running 4:40 pace, which is what I wanted to go out at. And I took off like a shot, and I attacked, and I ended up running like a 4:46 or 4:47 third mile, all out. And I mean, hard. Like I couldn't believe how fast it got really hard and that I ran this great effort. And the big difference was that I was actually finishing fast. I passed everybody else in the race except for those two guys from Southern Utah. And I ran a big PR, ran 15:22. And it hit me. Oh my God, like I couldn't have run 4:40 pace. I felt so easy after 2 miles at 10 minutes, and I still only managed to run 4:45, 4:46. So there's absolutely no way I could have run the 4:40s. But now I knew, like, I might be able to run 4:50, 4:52, you know, because I was able to run faster than 4:50 for that last mile. You know, and you actually get some frame of reference to what your fitness really is. When you go out too fast, you just know, oh, that was too fast. So George let me fly home, and I finally had learned this lesson. I finally figured out that you really can't go out too fast. And it was one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned, because there's no fighting. Enough lactic acid will shut your system down. I pride myself on being pretty tough. I used to do this thing at parties to kind of like prove how tough I was, where I would take a lighter and melt the skin on the underside of my arm. I don't mind pain that much, but at a certain point, lactic acid will shut you down. You just won't be able to move forward. So learning to go out a little slower and race is huge help. Last thing I'd like to talk about is long-term decision-making. In your training, in your running, you should always be thinking about the long term. It's very tempting to get wrapped up in the importance of this next race. Oh, I need to win against this next rival, or I really got to beat my good friend Bradley. You know, like I got to do this thing next time, or oh, this is the league meet, or this is the state championship. But I think that you should always make your decisions long term. Now, this is true with injuries. This is true with workouts. This is true with racing choices. And what I mean by that is if I'm hurt, if something's bothering me, and I'm trying to decide, well, should I run today or not? I say, well, if I run today, is it likely to cost me more training down the line? Or if I muscle through, will it not cost me? And if I think, oh, well, if I run today, it might cost me 2 days down the line, then I don't run today. And the same way with workouts. There's a lot of workouts you can do that might help you a lot in the short term. So if you're looking at me and you're saying, well, what workouts do I need to do to run as fast as I can possibly run in 4 weeks? Those could look a lot different than if you're asking me, well, what do I need to do to run my fastest in 2 or 3 years? But I think that because of the nature of the sport and the compounding gains, you should always be doing the workouts that are going to get you bigger gains for the long term. So if you do these workouts and you say, well, all right, my friend did these other shorter, faster, more intense intervals, and they got better for 4 weeks. Well, that's a very short period of time, and then it's hard to build on that. Versus if you're doing intervals with the more intense rest, or if you're doing tempo runs or hill climbs, long runs, medium long runs, that sort of thing. It might take a little longer to get the gains, but you can keep improving and keep building on it much more effectively. And it took me a long time to learn this. And so when I was in high school, I ran 10:20 as a freshman in high school, and I would only run, I think, 10:06 or 10:07 as a junior. So in 3 years, I only improved 13 seconds. And I had spent 2 years in junior high improving a lot, but doing these hard intervals, and I wasn't really building my aerobic house. And so as soon as I started doing that, I actually improved every year after my junior year in high school, up through until I was about 32, more than I had in that time in high school. And so I think that sort of long-term frame of reference can really help in that way. And along the same lines, it's the one area that I think you should always be careful with coaches, because coaches can get excited too about this meet or that meet being the biggest thing on your calendar and really want you to go. But if someone's asking you to run hurt or you know, run through something that you know it isn't ideal, if it's not the Olympics, if it's not, you know, the Olympic trials, it's probably not the best idea. I mean, if you know you're not going to run in college and it's a state cross-country championship or something like that, maybe you make the decision that you're gonna take a risk on an injury or an NCAA championship in college if you know you're not going to run beyond it. But even then, I think a lot of times it's a poor decision to make a choice that you're going to hurt yourself in the long term for a single race. And I think the only time you should do that is if you know this will legitimately be the biggest race of your entire life. And sometimes that's tough as a high schooler because everything seems like the biggest thing of your entire life. Coley mentioned the kid who asked if the girl was the one at age 17. And I think my answer was essentially like, well, you're 17. If she is, she'll still be here in 5 years. You know, it's hard. Everything seems like the biggest deal ever at that age. Versus you get older and man, nothing shocks you anymore. Nothing bothers you. I ran in Lowell for a number of years. It got to the point where, like, you know, someone pulled a gun on you and you're on a run and you're like, dude, you're not the first. Just put it away. You know, just everything sort of tones down with age. Nothing really bothers you. So I think that having that is probably the only good thing about maturity. Other than that, high schoolers, you mostly got the advantage. You tend to have better attitudes, tend to be more flexible, more willing to change. So, you know, just try not to lose that. But keep in mind, what seems like the end of the world, probably everything's going to continue on, usually, even in pandemics. All right, I can either try to come up with another like more entertaining story and less serious story, or does anybody have questions they want to post in the chat?
Guys should feel free to ask anything you want. Training wise, clearly life partner advice, training through the pandemic is, you know, one of our coaches is going to talk about that.
Great style advice straight out of the 90s.
I'm sorry?
It's also great style advice straight out of the 90s. I mean, you know, that was a really hip decade.
Always good looks. All right, well, why don't you go with one more story, and if anybody has questions, post them in the chat, but let's go with one more story.
So I think it's important in running to always stay focused and not get distracted too much. I had qualified for the World Championships. They were in Berlin, Germany. And Berlin, for those of you who haven't paid attention in history class or go to one of those schools that basically doesn't teach history, after World War II, Berlin was split into two cities, East and West Berlin. And the East was under Soviet control and was a communist regime and was very dour and kind of poor. And the West was under capitalism, and there was a lot of money put into making sure that it was super successful and vibrant. And then in 1989, the wall came down and they were reunited. But to this day, there's a very big difference. The wall's gone. There are just like bricks on the ground to kind of demark where it used to be. But like, you don't need the bricks. You step across into the East and you're like, when did everything get brown? Man, like, why is everything just like cinder block construction? So anyway, when I was in Berlin for the World Championships, they had built this brand new hotel in the East. And that's where they set up the athletes. And in Germany, they were really worried about security. This is post 9/11, but it was more for them about 1972. The last major championship before the 2009 World Track and Field Championships that Berlin had hosted, or Germany had hosted, was the Munich Olympics in 1972. And there was a terrorist attack and a number of Israeli athletes were killed. So when you got to this hotel, the reason they had selected it is there wasn't much around it. And they basically surrounded it with German, I believe they were military. If they were police, they were certainly dressed more military, and they were carrying M16s. And so as an athlete, you were given a lanyard with your picture and your things, and that was how you got in. And so there would be two soldiers. One would be holding his M16 and the other one would be checking your pass to get in when you went to the hotel, and you had to take it everywhere. So a couple of days before the marathon, I'm going out for my easy training run, and I had found this lovely little park not far from the hotel. And it was really neat because it was from the Soviet era. They hadn't taken down the old Soviet statues and stuff. So you'd be running through the woods, you come out in this field, and there'd be like a giant statue of Stalin or of Lenin. You know, it was kind of weird. It was a little bit like out of a movie. But anyway, I go for a run on this given day, and it's beautiful out. It's like 80 degrees, no humidity. I'm just kind of pumping along. And I'm on this little trail, and it comes down, and there's a pond, and there's just a little section of beach. It's not like a public beach by any means. It's like 10 feet of just soft sand on the edge of this little freshwater pond. And the rest of the world, just for those who haven't traveled, is a whole lot more comfortable with nudity than we are here in the United States. And you'll notice I have a theme of most of my stories. They involve naked people. So as I come down this trail, and I'm coming down towards this little beach, there are 3 overweight Germans, and I didn't know they were German at the time, sunbathing, completely naked, on this little patch of sand. And I am taken back. I am shocked. I am like, I'm a New Englander. I'm a prude. I can't handle this. And so I sort of try to like turn away and not look, and I'm just kind of like, and I trip and roll my ankle very badly on a root or a rock or something. I don't even know what it was. But I fall hard, and I can feel the ankle. Like, there's a moment of like white lightning pain and then like throbbing, you know. And these 3 Germans come running up, completely naked. And like they're all up in my grill, and they're trying to be helpful, and they're talking in German. And they're naked, and I'm just like, whoa, and there are things there you cannot see, you know, and it's like, whoa, what is that? What am I looking at? Are you a man? Are you a woman? Like, there's just the rolls and the hair, and it was just, whoa, like too much. And they're trying to be really, really helpful, and I'm trying to tell them I'm totally okay, but I'm not okay. So I get up, and I just sort of like quickly hobble away, and I am in like ungodly pain, and I can tell like, if I take this shoe off, it's not going back on, you know, like this is a bad sprain. And I know it's like about 1.5 miles to get from the park back to the hotel. And so I hobble back, and I'm dirty and scraped up. And as I approach the hotel, I start walking because the ankle's hurting, you know, and as I'm limping up, 4 or 5 of the security guys come charging over, and they've got their guns out and pointed. And I'm like, holy crap, you know, like I hit the floor, I got my hands on my head, blah, blah, blah. When I fell, my lanyard had torn off. And they basically were like, I'm an athlete. I tried to show, I thought like it was in my shirt, like where's my lanyard? And they're not letting me in, like there's no way. And they had one guy there who spoke English, and he basically calmed the situation down, but he said, you're not getting in. Like there's no way. You came through the fence without a security pass. You're lucky we're not arresting you. Turn around, go find your lanyards. The only way you're getting in here. If not, you're going to have to find Team USA's, you know, call like a Team USA coach and get them to come and get you. And I have my cell phone on me. I mean, I'm used. So I literally hobble on this ankle back to the park. And my 3 naked German friends are literally waiting on the beach with my pass. And they're like, basically get across in their broken English and my broken German. That like, we knew you'd come back for your pass. We waited with it, you know, like here you go. And it's like, oh, thank you. By this point, I've kind of gotten used to it. They're just always naked, you know. It's like, all right, whatever. Everything's normal now. And I hobble back up and get back in. Now, this is an example of like the long-term thing I was talking about is now I had to make a choice. This is 2 days before the World Championships marathon. It was the biggest race of my life at that time. And I've destroyed this ankle, and I was really concerned about whether I should try to race a marathon on it or not. In not being that much of a decision, the physical therapy people that Team USA had brought with them were amazing. And by the time I started the race, the ankle was actually like 99% better. The only like real side effect was I spent more time. You'd think Team USA had like more money than anybody in the world, right? So we had an ice bath set up. It was a kiddie pool, you know, like one of those little plastic pools, cost about $8.99 at Walmart. Your parents used to put out for you when you were like 4. We had a big one of those, and it was full of water, and they would just regularly dump ice from the hotel ice machine in it, and you would sit in it. And I met more Olympians and world championship and Olympic medalists because I was supposed to be in that 3 times a day. I helped a girl celebrate her shot put bronze medal. I hung out with Matt Tegenkamp and Chris Stolinsky as they complained about Evan Jager after they had run their 5,000 semis. It was really very interesting being in there with Amy Acuff, who was a 4-time Olympic high jumper. It was an experience. So all worked out in the end. All right, someone posted a question here. Have you implemented aerobic work into marathon training? So marathon training is aerobic work. It's all it is. So if you're talking about your marathon preparation, the only anaerobic work that is needed, and it's only needed if you're slow like me. If you are naturally a good 5,000 runner, so if I mentioned Ben True earlier, a 13-minute 5,000 runner moves to the marathon, you don't really need to do any true anaerobic work. Maybe in his base phase, a little 10K pace stuff, but his body processes lactic acid as fuel well enough that he's not going to have to. If you are someone who's a little bit slower, who's a natural slow twitch fiber athlete, you are going to develop some lactic acid during the marathon, and so you should be doing some VO2 max pace intervals all through your training to work on it. But other than that, for the marathon, what does that aerobic work look like? Well, you're going to be doing mileage and long runs, of course. But then there are 3 important paces throughout your training. There's what I refer to now as easy tempo, and that's about 90%, 89% of your marathon pace. For you guys, high school athletes, you're talking 60 to 70% of your 5K pace. It's like a quick training run, but you're going to do in marathon prep some longer runs of that. You'll start out maybe 10 miles and try to build up to 20 to even 25 miles at that pace. For me, what that look like, for example, my last heavy workout before the Olympic trials, I did 40 kilometers, which is 25 miles at about 5:24 mile pace. So that would be your easy tempo aerobic pace. Your next pace is what I call aerobic tempo. That's 90 to 100% of marathon pace. That's about 70 to 80% of your 5K pace. It's a little slower than your regular tempo runs. As a high school athlete, this is a great workout to be doing, but you should only be doing 5 to 6 miles of it, 5 to 7 miles maybe. But as a marathoner, you would try to build those runs out toward at least 12 miles, maybe as much as 16 or 17. This is the cornerstone of what Meb Keflezighi does. He starts out at about 8 miles at the beginning of a cycle. And he tries to build up to 15 miles, doing this workout every 10 days or so. And that is, and also that type of thing as a replacement or an alternate version for a Sunday long run for a 5K, 10K runner is a huge thing for aerobic development. So that was the cornerstone of John McDonald's program at Arkansas, which was super, super successful, won more NCAA titles than anybody. They did what was often referred to by people who ran with them as the Sunday long race. It's very normal for them to do a 12-mile Sunday long run at 5 to 5:30 pace, depending on the level of the athlete. And then, and also Joe Vigil at Adams State, who had the only perfect score in NCAA history, their first year in Division II. His athletes went 1 through 5 at the NCAA championship. They also that year beat Arkansas at Arkansas when Arkansas was the Division I champion. So they were some pretty amazing teams there. And then the third pace, which is less important in the specific phase, but is really important in the base phase, is your lactic threshold, your traditional tempo running pace. And that is definitely the bread and butter for marathon development. The next question was from Alex. You mentioned prioritizing the next 2 to 3 years in athletics rather than the next couple of months or next couple of races. What do you do to stay motivated for that long-term plan? That's a great question, Alex, because I think that short-term racing is so much more motivating. When you've got that deadline on you, it's huge. I think I still use the short-term races to stay motivated. I don't think that planning for long-term success means you can't improve in the short term. I just think that sometimes you're going to say, oh, I could improve a little bit more maybe for this race, but I'm doing this and I'm seeing that race as a stepping stone. But I also think that the nice thing about the long-term goals is that they can be a little more outlandish. I'm a big believer. There was a great American distance runner, finished top 10 at the World Cross Country Championship, finished 5th in the World 10,000s in the 90s, Todd Williams. And he had a quote that was pretty famous at the time saying that if you run 10 minutes for 2 miles, don't try to run 9 minutes, try to run 9:50. You know, your goals. And I think that the nice thing about having a really long-term goal is that you can kind of say, you know what, I want to be a sub 15-minute 5K runner. And right now I'm a 16:30 guy, but that's where I see myself in 2 to 3 years. Now my short-term goals, those are what are kind of keeping me going right now, and those are much more reasonable. I've run 16:30. At the end of this cross-country season, I want to run 16:15 or 16:10, or next week I want to run a 16:25, whatever it is. But I do think that, I think that you can still stay motivated with short-term stuff without necessarily approaching things in a way that you would sacrifice it. And I guess what I mean by that is this. If I want to run well in a 5K in this season or this month, but I'm more worried about my long-term goals, maybe I choose to prepare for that 5K by doing a couple more tempo runs, and on my intervals, making them a little more aerobic, either by doing longer intervals or by doing intervals with more aerobic rest, an alternation style interval, or like the 400s with the 200 jog at a quicker pace that I described, rather than trying to do everything as like super intense anaerobic work, really like blast myself. Like I'm trying to run that, I'm dropping like quarter PRs in intervals and that sort of thing, and really turn yourself inside out. Most of your great distance runners, if you watch them do intervals, it's almost a little disappointing. There was a great story of Bill Rogers in the late 1970s, early 80s. The guy was racing like 50 times a year, and he basically didn't lose. From 1978 to 1981, he was an unstoppable force from 5K to the marathon. And he was training with a really good group at the Greater Boston Track Club, and someone from Sports Illustrated came to see him work out. And he gets there, and he's been watching the workout for about 20 minutes, and he goes, "What the heck? I came to see Bill Rogers, and he didn't show up." And he says this to someone, and the guy goes, "What are you talking about? That's Bill right there." And he points to a guy in the middle of the pack doing the workout. And the guy's like, "But isn't he the best in the world? Why is he in the middle of the pack?" And he goes, "Oh, Bill doesn't work very hard in workouts. He knew the pace he was supposed to run, and he just ran it as relaxed as possible." And I think that's the best thing that you can do. When you've got a workout and you know, okay, this workout is preparing me for my 5K goal race. The goal isn't to run these reps as fast as I can possibly run them most of the time. The goal is to run it at the pace you need to run your race at with the least effort possible. And I'm a big believer in toughness. I love toughness in distance running, but that's not the time to get tough. Your coach might give you a workout where he says, "Hey, this is the time we're going to toughen up. We're doing these hills, and I want your eyes rolling back in your head." Or, and race day is time to get tough. That's when, when the gun goes off and it's a race, if you come across the line and you're not ready to throw up and passing out and all that jazz, you didn't do it right. But in a workout, the goal is to prepare for a specific thing. And so you say, okay, right now I'm preparing to run this 16:45K. That's 80 seconds a quarter. We're doing quarter repeats. I'm going to try to run these 80-second quarters as easily as possible to try to teach my body that 80-second quarter pace is a nice, easy pace. Something I can hold. So that's a long way. 3 miles is a long way. So that's what I would say.
Excellent.
And I know this one was from earlier, but Mason C., I totally agree. The kid who was saying, "How do you know if it's the one?" must have been talking about his running shoes. And unfortunately, it's the one when the shoe company changes it and ruins it. And then you're like, "That was my shoe, and I'll never have that again."
I'm never going to get the Asics Gel Light 3s again. I loved those.
Exactly.
Early 90s. They were fantastic.
Everybody's got one.
Yep.
Mine was the original Reebok Fly Light.
Oh, wow.
It was the greatest thing ever made. They made them for about an hour and a half. I got like 4 pairs. I burnt them out so fast that it was stupid. And then the next version was literally like a blister-creating brick designed to cause injury.
Yeah, yeah. Man, brutal. All right, one more question and then we'll wrap it up. I think Jared's got a question in there, but it sounds like you might have answered it.
Yeah, yeah. I loved a thing called a Reebok Flylight, the original. It was it had a flare 4-foot, which helps with stability. It was super flexible. It was lightweight, and it had a decent upper. I love that. I trained in Nike Frees when they first came out for a while. They had a Nike Free cross trainer. I love that. I'm going to put a caveat on this. If you're road racing, the carbon fiber shoes work. They will make you, they're cheating. They make you about 5 seconds a mile, 7 seconds a mile faster. It's outrageous. I hate them. I don't like how they feel. They're awkward and springy, at least the ones I've used. I haven't tried them all. But you go faster. And if that's the goal, then, you know, you can make different things. But in terms of like the best feeling, awesome shoes, yeah, those were all pretty high on my list. I ran for Saucony for years, and they had a pair of the original Fast Twitch, the early days Fast Twitch that I loved, except they had holes in the bottom because Saucony at the time had, they had been sponsoring some people and they all turned out to be on EPO. And so they stopped sponsoring people and just sponsored triathletes. And so all their competitive shoes had holes in them for the water to drain out when you did your transitions. And which is stupid because you transition from the bike to the run, not from the swim to the run. But anyway, that's what they did. And in the winter, ice water and slush would come up through these holes onto the arch of your foot. And it was miserable and led to like plantar fascia like you wouldn't believe. But the rest of the year, they were really a great shoe.
Excellent. All right. So, Nate, thank you very much for, you know, coming out again this year. We'll get you your chocolate chip cookie payment at some point this week, so you'll be all squared away. And I'm going to put 2 plugs in, and then we're going to take let's call it a 10-minute break before we go into the couple of breakouts. I had mentioned in the emails, we're offering the camp cookbook. If you just make a $5, at least a $5 donation to any charity that you want, just email me, Coach Coley at msn.com, with just that receipt that you had made that donation, and we will email you that cookbook out. It's got everybody's favorite recipes from camp, and so you can get some of that that home cooked feeling that you get at camp. So we'll take that. And actually, I'm sorry, before breakout stuff, yoga at 2 with the JCs are doing that today, 2 o'clock. They're leading that. They'll be doing an activity every afternoon, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Yoga core is how that is going to flow. And they're looking forward to doing that for you guys. The same link should work at 2 o'clock to do the yoga. And just as a reminder, one of our breakouts is that form breakouts. If you want to kind of participate as Emma and Catherine are going through a few different form drills, just be prepared for that. It's 11:08 by my computer, so let's say 11:18. Everybody back here, and we'll get into the couple breakouts this afternoon. Again, thank you very much, Nate. Thanks, guys. That's funny. Oh, shoot.
I was just texting you.
Yeah, I walked away and then I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, Emma, Spencer, and Catherine Rosenfeld put together for us. They had been coaches in the past. I think it's been a couple of years since Catherine's been up there, and Emma, last year was the first year Emma wasn't up there. Both Winchester grads, so of course they're two of our favorites. But I'm gonna pop this up here for you guys, and hopefully this will all work. Let me know if like volume's not working or anything like that. So.
Is it super laggy for everyone?
Yeah, and the audio is like breaking up. Zoom is notorious for not having good quality when it comes to sharing videos.
Okay. Then maybe what I'll do is I'll just post this on YouTube tonight, and you guys can watch it then, instead of trying to make that video work. So, all right, we'll see. And I learned another thing about Zoom. So, it's just keep on coming. All right, that worked. All right, so I am gonna pass this over to Coach Mahoney, who's gonna present on why speed matters. I think this is an excellent thing. I think sometimes the distance runners decide that, maybe I don't need to worry about doing strides or, sprints and that kind of stuff at the end of a run, or, don't work as hard on some of those speed days where we're on the track or we're out on the course trying to run some good repeats on a home course or something like that. So Coach Mahoney's guys are and I think I saw Sebi in here earlier. I mean, I've seen him finish on the track, racing Billy, and he's always got an excellent finish. So clearly, Coach Mahoney knows what he's talking about and gets it done with his guys. So without further ado, Pat, you're up. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Off to a rip-roaring start. Thank you guys. Thank you, Coley. It's amazing, all of you youngsters who are tuning in, just showing your dedication to your craft and how much you want to get better, for yourself and for the team. So it's really impressive seeing all you guys here this morning. So thank you. All right. So this is really about sneaky speed. Okay. As Coley said, and Nate mentioned it as well, cross-country runners are not known for their leg speed. Sprinters make fun of us, so on and so forth. We're not called real athletes because we don't have kind of that blazing speed seen on a field. But that's something you can always, always, always work on. So this is really sneaky speed. It's not replacing anything that your coach is doing. Nate talked about the aerobic engine and the aerobic capacity you need, which is kind of really a fancy way. You guys probably know it as, your coach is building a foundation of miles, or you're building a foundation of miles. That's all your aerobic capacity. So this isn't really replacing any of that. It's just a way to sneak it in to give you a lot more, or at least a little more, somewhere between a little more and a lot more leg speed, especially for your finishing kick at the end. And again, since we've been 3 years old, kids always want to go fast. Kids always want to sprint. Kids always want to sprint as hard as they can, race the 100-meter dash. And, we're not going to give that up just because we're cross-country runners. So traditional cross country is all about that big mileage base, also known as LSD, long, slow distance, especially during the summer and especially during September. But if you're not careful, the term I use, it's a slog. Okay, you can just feel like you're stagnant, you're slogging along, you're running 8-minute miles day after day, run after run, and you kind of lose that edge. You feel rusty, you feel flat, stagnant, a slog, whatever you want to call it. So a way to avoid that, and again, you feel that so much, especially now when the weather is hot, you're just slogging away. So the way to fix that and the way to kind of get out of that rut that all cross countries kind of runners find themselves in, as we're just running the same pace day after day, is this sneaky speed that I've been talking about. And you got to be careful. Okay, it can really slow twitch you up. Okay, you can lose those fast twitch fibers. You can lose that finishing kick speed if you're doing just 30, 40, 50 miles of 8-minute pace day after day after day. Okay, so again, this is a way to avoid that issue and keep your speed up, have fun while doing it, which is all going to be beneficial for your racing and really mentally as well, because you're going to feel fast instead of feeling sloggy and slow. All right, so it's really a track principle, okay? And here's a mile example. And again, I'm sorry, ladies, I only coach boys, so I only know boy time. So if you're going to be a good miler, you need to be good at the 400, okay? Or else you're never going to hold 65-second pace. You got to be able to run sub 60. So it's really a track principle that I'm going to apply to cross country. All right, if you're a slow 400 runner, then you're never going to be able to hold 65 pace and run a 420 mile. You need to be able to run 55 quarters or faster. If I take it one step further or one step shorter, if you want to be a fast say you do the 400 meters in outdoor track, something like that. Okay, you got to have good 200 speed. You're never going to run a sub 55 400. If your 200 meters is 30 seconds, it just doesn't add up. The math just doesn't work. So I'm really taking this track principle and applying it to cross country. Say if a boy's trying to run 17 minutes, that's 540 pace. But how do you train for that? You can't just run 540 pace and practice every day, okay? You're not going to make it. So how do you train your body for sub 540 pace? Again, it's that speed. This is in addition to that aerobic track workout stuff, the VO2 max stuff. But small doses of really fast speed can go a long way to lowering your mile pace for your 5K. All right, so here's how you sneak it in. You can sneak it in with your dynamic stretching every day. Simple, easy stuff. Instead of doing regular high knees and butt kicks, you can do speed high knees and butt kicks. Really just 7 seconds. So just 7 seconds of super high, high knees as fast as you can go. 7 seconds of butt kicks as fast as you can go. Just a quick little thing to get that turnover going and get your feet moving and get your feet off the ground. It's so simple, but it can be so effective. You can incorporate accelerations into your dynamic routine, and that's what this picture is of before. If you're doing your dynamic warm-up, across the track or across the high jump area, when you're warming up every day, you can add full accelerations. Again, just to get those fast twitch fibers going, just to get you moving, just to get that kind of muscle memory of what running all out feels like. Because sometimes distance runners, cross country runners, we could go years, weeks, months, years without, going all out, except at the end of a race. So we don't just want to sprint just at the end of a big race. You want to do just a little bit of sneaky sprinting, just like accelerations. So you could really start this with your dynamic routine. Okay. If your coach wants to get advanced, you can do wickets or banana hurdles. You can put those into your warm-up routine if you guys know those, especially if you do indoor or outdoor track. All sneaky little stuff you can add to your warm-up just so you can go really fast for just a little bit. Hills. So obviously you're going to do your traditional hill sprints, your longer hill sprints, your 300, 400, 500, 600 meter hill sprints, you know, so good for your aerobic engine. Those are really important. Those are really good. But you can also sneak in hills like this, just like this guy's doing. It's barely a hill. It's flat. It's barely a hill. And this guy looks like a sprinter, not a distance runner. On kind of a regular day, you know, we could do our regular run, but stop by a little mini hill and do 10 times 100 meters on a small incline. One, it's kind of fun because, you know, you're racing everybody. Cross-country runners, again, aren't used to going all out. But just doing something like this, just on a regular run, just a little incline, 10 times 100 every couple of weeks or so. It can be fun and it's really beneficial. You're going to get at least 800 meters worth of work. I should have done really 8 by 100. So at least 800 meters worth of work. So in addition to your regular hills, you can also sneak in some speed hills. We have a hill like this right by Masco, where we sneak in speed hills. And I'm actually in the summer training program for Masco for the guys. I have them go do this once a week, just because they don't get stagnant. You know, just slogging through, especially all these heat waves. I just don't want them slogging through 40, 50 miles a week. They can go to the light hill like this, sprint a little bit, have fun, race each other, and it's beneficial at the same time. Strides. So this is an addition, or this is different. So you have your form strides, you know, at the end of practice. We've done those every year at camp. Coley knows the value of those. You know, we spend so much time at camp emphasizing form strides for efficiency. But this is just a little something different. You should definitely do those strides. But why not this? In the last couple miles of your run, instead of just slogging along for the last couple of miles, change it up. Throw in some 20-second speed strides on your distance run. So it looks something like this. So for like the last 8 minutes of your run, do 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off. That 20 seconds on should be well under race pace. And then that 40 seconds off, you should be back to normal distance pace. It's harder than it sounds, you know, because when you're off that 40 seconds, it's not like a jog or a walk like you might be doing on the track, excuse me. You're back to normal run pace. So a good way to change things up, a great way to get sneaky speed. It can be really, really beneficial to do that. And I have my boys do that at least once a week as well. Okay. And this also emphasizes change of pace, which you will inevitably have to do in a big race at some point. Okay. You know, if the race is going out a little bit slower than you want, you may have to sit back and be patient. If you have some annoying runner next to you who likes to speed up and slow down, we've all come across that runner before who just speeds up and slows down and annoys the crap out of you. And that last mile, obviously, you need to pick things up. So this is a great change of pace workout as well, just by sneaking in those 20-second on, 40-second off strides in your regular distance run. On the track. So again, I'm sure you're on the track doing your big aerobic workouts like 4 by mile by like 5 times 1,000. But again, we rarely have the chance, or rarely have the chance, I should say, to do anything all out. Okay. I would probably only do something like this once or twice a season because it's a little against the grain. But again, I'm always willing to try new things and not really always go, you know, with conventional wisdom. So once or twice a year, I might do something like this, a killer workout, 300, 300, 200, nearly all out with 1 minute rest. Just a killer, but it simulates that last 800 of a race. Okay. Where, you know, you've been in it for 2.5 miles. All you want to do is stop. You're a half mile away from the finish line. You need another gear. So doing something like this, but this is a big lactate workout. But again, it's a little unconventional because, you know, you're going nearly all out, which is rare in cross country. Something a little more benign and a little less invasive is changing up. Again, this is all about changing up your regular distance runs so you're not slogging through 40 miles a week. Do something on the track. Do a 3 or 4 or 5 mile run on the track and sprint the straightaways and jog the curves. Okay, great speed work, great change of pace stuff. You're off the roads, you're off the trails, you're trying something different, it's something new, which can get your team excited and get you guys excited, especially if your cross-country team hasn't been on the track in a while. So just sneaky speed, just sprinting those straightaways. It's just sneaky speed. It's change of pace, and it's going to make you faster. Okay, so these short bursts of nearly full speed, it not only builds up your speed and your speed reserve. So your speed is kind of your finishing kick sort of thing, but your speed reserve is lowering that, mile pace. If you want to go from running a 6-minute mile to 5:50 miles, okay, working on your speed and your speed reserve, that's where this comes from. Okay, so this is just a way to sneak in speed. You're not really replacing anything that you're already doing. You're not getting rid of long hills. You're not getting rid of long runs. You're not getting rid of track workouts. Just some ideas about how to sneak in some speed without hurting anything else. And just a way to avoid the slog of 8-minute pace or whatever your pace is for 30, 40, 50 miles a week. It's not only great physically, but it's great mentally to change things up and to feel fast again. Because cross-country runners, especially, when you're grinding it out, you can feel slow sometimes. Okay, and where is my speed gone if you're doing a lot of mileage? So this is a good way to make yourself physically faster, but also make you feel better mentally and make you feel fast mentally as well. So that's it. That's what I got. Sneaky speed. Cole, you're on mute.
I know. Halfway through my sentence, I realized what was going on. Thank you, Pat, for doing that. I think detailing just kind of all different ways to do that, and doing it in different ways also stays away from being stagnant instead of just doing strides every day after your run. So thank you for pointing the need for it, but also the different ways to go about it to stay away from being stagnant. So there's a question in the chat, not about speed necessarily,
Sure,
but high mileage versus low mileage. And I think Danielle is still on here. So I'm going to ask Pat first, maybe to comment on what you look at as high mileage versus low mileage. Ask Danielle, and then I'll pipe in a little bit as well. And then we'll kind of wrap up for the morning and be back at 2 o'clock for some yoga. So Pat, high mileage versus low mileage.
Yeah, Mason. So at Masco, we really take a conservative approach. We are not a high mileage program because of the injury factor. I just, have made the conscious decision as a coach. I am not going, because the higher mileage you run, kind of the chances at injury increases. So I really stay away from that line as much as I can. So so my guys will get up to 40 something miles a week, and we'll run 40s through September. And then we'll really kind of back down. So we're definitely on the lower end of things. I just made the decision, do I want to do high mileage? And, yeah, in theory, if you guys run high mileage and you don't get hurt, you're going to be really good likely. But if you run high mileage and you're hurt, then you're not running at all. So I'd rather have my guys in, 90 to 95% fitness and healthy with lower mileage than kind of push the mileage and maybe get them to 100% max capacity, but increasing the injury risk. So I feel like I'm kind of on the fringe with that. I think, most programs do more mileage than we do. Good question.
All right, I'm coming. All right, so I'm actually on that same page of low mileage. We kind of do based off of how many years we do have runners. So a good chunk of our kids actually, we do a middle school program. So a lot of them are already set to do higher mileage than as if someone freshman year is brand new to running. So we go off of that. Also, I'm at work, so if people start popping up, don't worry about it. But for our female group, I have some girls who are on the lower end. They'll get 25 miles, and they still do quality work. But they might not be as conditioned as some of our other athletes. I have one that it's based off of again experience and your own thing. But I have a girl she gets about 40 a week, but she runs marathons and all that stuff. She'll be a senior this year, but she runs a lot. So it's based off of how your skill set is. If you run a lot and you tend to get injured, then backing off, doing easier miles than, again, running yourself to hurt. We do usually weekly checkups of how people are feeling, if it's too much or too little. But again, summer is usually where the mileage is higher than in season. So, but we have, again, a wide range of experienced runners. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think I've been at places where we did high miles. I was at Malden Catholic for a little while, and we had guys going into senior year that were doing like mid to high 70s for the week. And their long run was a 15 miler. And that team, but those guys were durable. And that was probably our top 8 to 10 guys for the most part. One of our guys was working at a Y camp all summer and just did the same 5-mile loop that was hilly. So he was getting in a lot of work, that way. But then, I definitely have backed it down. Our one of our top guys this past year, I think he maxed out at 65 last summer. Again, another very durable kid. And he's headed to Merrimack in the fall, not racing, unfortunately, because of all this, but will be racing once all that starts up again. And I just ran with him yesterday morning and finished off his week was a 73-mile week. So he bumped up going into college, but not, that's from 65 max to a 73 max is like 11% increase. So I'd say we end up focusing more on getting that longer run a little longer than, the total miles. And we've worked on minutes as well. You're going to go out for 60 minutes rather than go out for, 7 or 8 miles. And that helps take into consideration days like today, which is going to be, in the low 90s. So the miles are going to be slower, but if you can just get that hour in rather than the miles in, I think that's helped. So yeah, and again, like you said, Danielle, it's kind of, there aren't freshmen that are going to be going out and running 65, going into that year, but, can you gradually build up and how durable are you and, all that kind of, and how driven are you and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, so excellent question. So back at 2:00, anybody that wants to join for yoga, please feel free. I see a lot of people from a lot of different teams on here, so feel free to pass this along. We'd love to have anybody and everybody join us. This is free, and you don't have to be in everything all week long. So pop in and out whenever you can for guest speakers and different activities. And also, I think by 2:00 this afternoon, we'll have more information on the video game stuff that Jacob's trying to put together for everybody as well. So thank you guys for coming out this morning. We'll see you this afternoon. Later.
Thank you all.